Hello, everybody, and welcome back to 50 Shades of Tay. My guest today is the co-founder of Mutant. I am so excited to be joined by Mo Shafeek. Mo, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you for joining me. We were just talking about how it's been like 5 months already since we met at the physical release party for Cobra Kai and for the Penguin. That was such a fun event, and I can't wait for you guys to throw another party like that.
Oh man, I wish. It was a proof of concept and the concept proved successful, I would argue. Now it's just a matter of me being in Los Angeles all the time, where everyone is all the time.
Oh my gosh. But yeah, it was so cool and really exciting to get to hear the scores live. And it's just, an important reminder of how uh, important live music is. Before we get into Mutant, I did want to ask you, do you have a favorite memory from a concert, maybe like your favorite performance you ever attended or favorite concert?
Yeah, I didn't wear this shirt purposefully, but this is gonna be my easy out as an answer. I've gone to a lot of live shows in my life. In fact, I used to be a tour manager, so I was on
Oh.
the road, traveling the world doing gigs. So live music is a big part of my life, but the weird intersection of what I do for a living and like my past life as being a road manager really came in the form of doing this live show for Josie and the Pussycats back in 2017, I think it was. We did this live event to tie in to a record release for the soundtrack to Josie and the Pussycats, which was one of my favorite soundtracks of all time. I worked with the film's directors, Deborah Kaplan and Harry Elfont, to do a reissue of the record. And along the course of putting together the record, I became aware of the fact that Deb was still friendly with Kay Hanley, who did the lead vocals of Josie and the Pussycats, of Josie in particular on Josie and the Pussycats. And she just sort of floated to her very casually, being like, "Hey, we're doing this record. Would you maybe want to do a live show?" And she just like immediately texted, being like, "Yeah, let's do it." And it just sort of snowballed from there. We did this record release at the Ace Hotel in LA, where we managed to get the girls back together, which was Rachel Cook, Rosario Dawson, Tara Reid. Kay Hanley performed with her band members, like from Letters to Cleo, but also Adam Schlesinger, rest in peace, performed live at that show. The original session musicians who like did the album, it was their first and kind of only time ever playing the songs from the Josie and the Pussycat soundtrack. Um, it's one of the most like surreal nights of my life, and it was so tied to this thing that I was working on, so I kind of feel just so emotionally connected to it. So that's going to be my answer, even though I'm sure there are other, I've seen Prince a couple of times. I'm sure that's
Wow.
up there too, but that this one has a little more of emotional resonance for me.
No, that's an incredible answer. I love the Ace Hotel. First of all, I haven't been there in years, but I love it there so much.
I haven't been
Um,
there since.
oh wow. But
Yeah.
maybe that's a good thing. Like maybe you like go out on a high note.
Well, speaking of going out, I mean, look, ever since we did that show, me and Deb and Harry, we message every now and then, and we're just sort of like, so when are we doing it again? When are we doing it again? So, if there's a repeat at the Ace, maybe that's because it's been,
Ooh,
it's almost coming up on 10 years since we did it.
wow.
So, wow.
That's crazy. Who else did you tour manage for?
I used to tour manage in the pop punk and emo scene, so I was on, multiple Warp tours. The bands in particular that I worked with were signed to labels like Drive Thru Records. So I Am the Avalanche, Halifax. I also toured with this band from Warner Records called Meg and Dia. Meg Frampton and Dia Frampton, these sisters. Dia Frampton, who ended up going on to play second in the first season of The Voice. I toured with her band before that all happened, and some of the best years of my life on the road. Absolutely adored it. It's a really special time in my life. I mean, I opened for tours for like, Saves the Day, the Get Up Kids, Paramore, just like bands like that. Like I was on the road with them, Gym Class Heroes, Fall Out Boy, like Angels and Airwaves. It was just like I was on these tours for months at a time and made, lifelong friends doing it. Still some of my favorite people in the world are from the touring industry. It's a really important part and community, and this is a bit of a tangent, but I recently watched the Taylor Swift documentary about the Eras tour, and as I was watching it, I was like, "Thank you!" Not like necessarily because Taylor needs more money or needs more accolades, but because it's like maybe the first time I've seen the touring industry depicted as the very strange and singular community experience that it actually is, which is just like a bunch of like below the line talent all working their asses off day in and day out in a very blue collar way to put on a show every single night in a very repeating sort of like, recurring hallways and spaces that are kind of like a little bit maddening because you're just in these like, arenas that have like nothing in them except for giant parking lots surrounding them. But in that space, you find community and you find, purpose and you find, joy with the people that you're sort of trapped in this weird sort of experience, singular experience with. And if you haven't seen it, I feel like that is the quickest line into understanding exactly how joyful and strange the touring industry can be.
Oh, no, that's great. I have had that on my watch list for a while now, so I'm going to check that out very soon.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, I love her, and that sounds like a really cool docu-series.
Yeah.
Uh, so, as far as Mutant, when and how did this come about?
Oh, well, so I've been making records now for about 15 years. I was one of the lead creatives over at a company called Mondo, about 15 years ago in 2011, I started. And I started just kind of as general manager. And because of my history in the music industry, our former CEO then at the time asked me if I would want to consider running a very nascent record label that they were starting there. They had already just done one release at the time, and they were planning on ramping it up due to the success. It was a record for the soundtrack to a 1980 slasher film called Maniac.
Ooh.
By Jay Chataway, and when we worked on that, it was very popular. It was kind of at the very beginning of a very slow vinyl boom that was surging at the time. Record Store Day had just started, and it was this whole thing, right? So I had never made a record before in my life, and I kind of just faked it till I made it. I was like, I mean, I've always been a huge fan of film music, so that wasn't a problem. And because I do had obviously I have a very big record collection and always have, so it was not for lack of interest, but I've never like made a record before. All the bands I tour managed, I had to order the records to come into stock for when I was gigging and making sure I had enough stock for the merch table, but never manufactured records. So I kind of just like winged it. And over the course of a couple of years, the actual keys to the car got handed to me as far as creative as well. At first, it was just about logistics, and now I was actually being able to pick the movies, and that's when things like Jokes and the Pussycats happened, or when I was finally able to get a couple of things into the pipeline that I'd always been obsessed with and wanted to do, like Fight Club and the Back to the Future trilogy, and the Mission Impossible series, like some of my favorite movies of all time. I had just sort of followed my bliss for many years, and I think we were pretty successful at it. The Mondo era of my life was a really, really fun and special, fulfilling route. I met my partner, my business partner, Spencer Hickman, then, who had been running a label called Death Waltz Records, Death Waltz Recording Company. And Mondo and them merged at one point, and so Death Spencer and I started co-running this thing together. And then the pandemic hit, and we were owned by a company called the Alamo Drafthouse, which is a
Oh,
movie
yeah.
theater chain based out of here in Austin, Texas. And because of just financial liquidity reasons, they needed to offload us to sort of make some money. And so they sold us to a company called Funko. And I'm gonna yada 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 that section of time because legally I'm probably not really supposed to talk too much about that time. But at a certain point, I left Funko, and me and Spencer left Funko, and we decided let's start it over again. Let's do it indie this time. Let's do it right. Let's make sure we're doing it on our own terms. And that's when we started Mutant.
Oh, that is so cool. I didn't know any of that, so I'm glad you told me all of that because, yeah, I really had no clue. But where did the
Okay.
name Mutant come from?
Oh boy. I wish it was something that we had like long been gestating, but we really racked our brains to figure out what we were going to be called. It was me. Mutant started as five people, and it was all ex-Mondos. Eric Garza, a creative director from Mondo as well. Mitch Putnam, like one of the co-founders of Mondo as well. myself, Spencer, and Jenny Jacoby, who wasn't necessarily a Mondo, but she came from the Alamo Drafthouse world as well. All very much affected by the thing that had happened in 2020. And so when we were getting together trying to figure it out, we had built this thing with our buddy Elijah Wood and Daniel Noah, who have a production company called Spectre Vision. And we were trying to figure out like what our identity was adjacent to it because they were technically part of the family as well. And so at one point we were going to be called like Spectre Vision Industries. I think technically our legal name is Spectre Vision Industries, but we were trying to figure out like, oh, are we like going to be a merch arm for them? Are we going to be doing our own thing? Are we going to be, and we arrived at the name Mutant sort of early on in the phase. I may have even been Elijah who had suggested Mutant, and we, found that really kind of cool. But then immediately we're like, all the people in our ears who had any legal background were all like, you should probably figure out how that works. If can you even call yourself mutant in 2025? You start looking up like what startups and companies are called, and you start realizing that everything has to have like a missing vowel in it or has to have like some weird like alternate consonant starting it because like every word is taken. We decided that it was like Mondo was literally, it is a word that means the word world in most parts of the globe.
Mhm.
Mondo, the etymology of it is like so international. And if you search for Mondo anywhere else other than America, you're just like searching for a globe effectively. So, and we kind of like took that to heart, which was like we kind of got attached to Mutant and we were like, you know what, like we really like Mutant. We really like Made by Mutant, actually. Like that's what we wanted it to be. And you can't really call like you can't really anyway. I'm getting in the weeds here, but we fell in love with the phrase Made by Mutant, and so we decided that that was going to be sort of where we went and what differentiated us from like the many mutants that exist out there in all spaces, like But it ended up being to our benefit because like we really kind of focus our attentions on just making good product and like rather than like worrying too much about like who what the name even meant because we were just sort of I don't know a sort of a off-kilter, hybrid mutant version of a thing that we were doing before, and with a single vision, the single eye, and there's a lot of different ways you could take it, but, as much as we discussed it, the more that it kind of just felt like really we didn't know who we were until we were working with a logo designer and we discovered that our mascot, which we called Maxwell,
Oh,
and we saw him and we were like, that's us. We
oh,
definitely
that's
that's
awesome.
who we are. That is him. That he is us. We love him, and so Maxwell was born, and Mutant stuck, and it kind of felt like a little bit like a skate punk, like early 90s style skateboard brand. We kind of had this like energy in our heads where we were like, no, we want to do indie, we want to do 90s, we want to kind of have this. And sorry, these are all just like very like tangentially, there's things that were in the air and I'm kind of plucking them at random. But at the end of the day, when we kind of put, pedal to the metal, I remember we were working on our first movie. I think it was Lisa Frankenstein
Oh,
with our friends at Universal Backlot, and they asked us for a logo. And so we were just sort of like we made a fake logo and we sent it to there, and then like ultimately we figured out what our logo was and what our title, what our branding was and all this stuff. But then it was too late because we had already seen that poster. The poster was out there and had the old logo,
mhm.
and so yeah, you can kind of see a little bit of a trajectory of like how we were finding ourselves in midstream because it kind of came together pretty quickly. We left our old place in 2020 at the beginning of 2023, and by the end of 2023 we had our new home, so it really did you know that's how we arrived there anyway.
Oh, I love Lisa Frankenstein, first of all. That is such a
Great
great
movie.
movie. Oh, love it so
Great movie.
much.
Yes.
Um, but I'm such a huge fan of literally everything that Mutant puts out. I have my record here, I have my Star Wars record over there. Out of all the releases you guys have done, do you have a favorite, whether it's the music or the packaging or the way the vinyl looks?
Oh boy. Favorites, favorites, favorites. So, usually I mean I love to always like claim domain over things that I have fully vested my creative energies into, but my coworker Spencer has been absolutely knocking things out of the park. We kind of divide and conquer a little bit. He has his projects that he sort of manages, and to date, he has been just absolutely knocking it out of the park. He brought to life that Severance package that
Oh,
we
so
did for
good.
Severance season two and really put in the work to make that thing a reality. It was like almost like 8 months worth of work and creative to get to that place, and all the approvals within, and him and Greg Ruth really just absolutely had this vision in their heads and they executed it, and it was so fun. And I feel like, someday, when the dust has settled and we're allowed to, it would be really fun to just show every iteration of how we arrived there, because it went through so many revisions and so many different things, and he put in the work. And when I finally held one in my hand, I was like, this is so cool. And also, like, sometimes when you have to compromise and you have to like make changes that were like not in your original vision, you could see are the things that you didn't want. In this one, like I saw it and I was like, this is just so cool. Like it doesn't even matter what it was supposed to be at one point, and it arrived at this other thing. Separately, I'm waiting to get it. I think it's going to arrive for me this week, but the Frankenstein deluxe edition that we
Yeah.
just worked on together, putting out with Netflix is just like it's truly a dream come true. It's so special. I didn't see that movie before we started working on it. Usually we get screeners for movies and sometimes they keep things from us. It really depends. Like they'll fly me out to LA to go watch a movie, but sometimes they'll be like, "Hey, we will send you a link." And this one was one of those ones where they were just like, "No, we're keeping this behind, on close guard." So we really kind of had to like fly in the dark a little bit with it. And I remember when I saw what he had worked on behind the scenes with the filmmakers, with the artist Francesca Francavilla on the two different versions, the way they both turned out, I'm just like I was over the moon. I was like, "Oh my God, this is so special." Um, then the last one I'll shout out, and this is just because it was just sort of like a infinity years in the making, but Gilmore Girls.
Oh, yeah.
I recently just worked to get the Gilmore Girls soundtrack out for the 25th anniversary of the show, and I remember the very first time I watched the show, it was with my wife, and she had been a longtime fan since 2000, right? And I think it was maybe in 2015 or something like that. We were at home and there was a forthcoming festival here in Austin, Texas called ATX Fest, which is a television festival, and the cast of Gilmore Girls is going to be there. And she was like losing her mind, and I had no context for it because I was sort of like, I've never seen an episode of this show. I was a little naively macho, and I was like, it has the word girls in it. That's not for me. Even though I'm literally head to toe in Josie and the Pussycats right now. But I was just like, yeah, I'll watch it, sure. And immediately I was like, oh, this show is so funny. It's whip smart. It's rapid fire. It's so my speed. I just love clever writing. I just love like the absolute wit that show has. And then, not to mention that the La Las in that show. If you've never seen this show before, there's a score to that show that is a musician named Sam Phillips who strums her guitar and sings these very like harmonic la 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 la's. Like, there's a very like melodic, fun stream of consciousness. I mean, it's well written, it's scored, but I mean, it feels stream of consciousness, like a busker on the street, just sort of scoring your day. And obviously, this show takes place inside of this really idyllic Connecticut town, and so you could imagine that there's just a panhandler on the streets, just playing, strumming the guitar all day, and this is just the anthem for this town. And as I was watching this show, I was like, it's kind of crazy that this music has never been released before, ever. And I immediately emailed, my partners at Warner Brothers, and I was like, hey, what's going on with this? And like, I never really heard anything back. And then for the anniversary this year, they were like, hey, I know you've been asking about, Gilmore Girls for all these years. Now's your chance. Do you want to strike? Do you
Oh,
still want to do it? And I was just like, oh my God, yes. So we manifested this thing together and finally got it out. And it just felt like one of those things where I was like, I know I didn't, man. I didn't do any. I had nothing to do with this, but I feel like there was like a boulder, and like someone asked me to help push it a little bit over the hill, and we finally got it there together. And it's moments like that where I realize that like there are just some things that never come out unless somebody has the gumption to get it out.
yeah.
And I feel like sometimes that is the strange place that I find myself in sometimes. So when people message me and they're like, "Oh, you should do this," I'm like, is this a thing that like will never happen unless I do it? And then I
Yeah.
have to like go, oh, maybe that's actually what my purpose is here.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so you mentioned Severance, and I that's like my favorite show. I'm obsessed with that show. That score is incredible. I could listen to it all day. It perfectly fits the tone of the show too. But when I saw the announcement for that vinyl packaging and just how cool everything looked. I was obsessed. I was like, man, this is like exactly how it should look and
Yeah.
feel. And then you mentioned the Frankenstein one. I last week went to the exhibit here in LA where they had the
Oh yeah.
costumes and the props and rare books and
Cool.
jewelry. It was incredible. But that vinyl packaging that you guys put together for it also is just like an extension of the world that Guillermo built. So both of
Yeah.
those, so awesome that you mentioned those. Because when I was looking again today, I was like, what are my favorites that you guys have done? Those are definitely two of my favorites that you guys have done.
Thank you. That's really sweet. Yeah, I mean, look, I feel so fortunate, but I'm also in this weird space where I'm like, I'm always looking like 10 projects ahead of time. I
Yeah.
was just actually talking to Spencer about this, where it's so surreal, where you finally get a shipment in the mail of a sample and you look at it and you're like, it turned out okay. Okay, now I have to go and focus on the next, the next one. Because like I just did Wake Up Dead Man, and that's like a long-term collaboration as well with Nathan Johnson. I've been working with him now since 2012 on all of the soundtracks from Looper, Knives Out, Glass Onion, this. We still aspire to go back and do Brick and Brothers Bloom, all the Ryan Johnson scores that he did. I also did Nightmare Alley with Guillermo and Nathan Johnson a couple years ago as well. And so it's like this like surreal thing where you're like, oh crazy, like I've been working on this thing since July. I went and saw the movie early, they showed it to me early, we started developing the project, and then before you know it, like they show up in the mail and you get it and you're like, oh, this is so crazy, but I don't have the time to like spend the time just sort of revering this. I have to keep moving. And I
Yeah.
almost like I'm gonna go into this conversation without even talking about Sinners, which is like
Oh my
so insane
gosh,
because
yes.
like one, I'm just like I'm obsessed with Ryan Coogler and Ludwig Göransson,
Hmm.
and have been for years. We worked on back at Mondo. I worked on the Creed album, the very
Oh.
first score for Creed, and fell in love with Ludwig. Was sort of nascently aware of him because he did the music for Community.
Oh
And it was
yeah.
like one of these things where I was like, oh, and then I would read the liner notes for Childish Gambino records, and I'd be like, oh, that's so fun that like Donald Glover and Ludwig met on Community and they made these records together, and then like before I knew it, it was kind of just like spiked and exceeded. And in that window of time, I worked on Black Panther and Black Panther Wakanda Forever and Mandalorian, and so it's like all these things where, and I even worked on Oppenheimer too when he started working with Christopher Nolan. And so fine, when Sinners was coming out, I planted my flag. I was like, we need to do Sinners. We need to do Sinners. And the fact that we got to was just this insane thing and this ride that we've been on ever since April of last year. And that I'm gonna, actually bump that up on the list. That's one of the things I'm most proud of having touched. It really was just such a special project and continues to be. And I'm just so happy for them and hope that the award season treats them right,
Yes.
because it's been a real joy to see it unfold the way it has.
Yeah. Oh my God. I'm so glad you mentioned Sinners. I would have been so devastated if we ended this conversation
Yeah.
without talking about that score. So thank you for bringing that up. I feel like I know the answer to this next question just based off something you posted on Instagram maybe like a month or two ago. But is there a score or soundtrack out there that you eventually one day would like to put out a mutant release of?
Yeah, I mean, there's dozens. The list has gotten smaller and smaller because, in the years of reissue world, of the reissue labels coming together and sort of like going through the catalogs and touching things, I feel like a lot of us have gone through the what we consider the holy grails,
Mm.
like I for a while, something like Josie or even Magnolia or Punch Drunk Love, like the John Bryan stuff from Paul Thomas Anderson, were like my holy grails. The Mission Impossibles were my holy grails at one point. Like I've been so lucky that I've been able to like chip away at some of my favorite films of all time and working on some of my favorite film music of all time. Um, I think the number one on my list that I feel like we got close, we almost touched it, and then it kind of got away from us for a number of reasons, is the score to Amelie by
Ooh.
Jan Tiersen.
All
Have you
right.
ever
All
seen
right.
Amelie?
Yes. Yes. That'd be a perfect score.
Oh my God, that score is one of my favorite pieces of film music, and
Oh.
it is just one of these things that with every passing year, I feel like the kids just don't know about Amelie, but
Yeah.
separately, it is just one of my favorite albums. I adore that album to death. I listen to it all the time. And there's a score that just came out for a film that most people have widely ignored called The Big Bold Beautiful Journey.
Oh my God, I just watched that yesterday.
Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, I did. I did.
Oh my God. So Joe Hisaishi, the legendary composer who done all the Studio Ghibli songs and music and so much more, an iconic composer in his own right, like watching A Big Bold Beautiful Journey, like it feels like that's the most like Amelie-esque score I've heard in a long time. It has this very, very romantic and twinkly ethereal, but also just it's a very romantic and powerful score. And I'm working on a Big Bold Beautiful Journey right now.
Oh,
And we're gonna aim to have it out next month on pre-order.
oh,
But
cool.
I still dream. I dream of doing Amelie. If anyone who's listening knows who has
Yeah.
the rights to Amelie, let me know. It's long eluded us, and
Oh,
it's been a long and complicated. Because that's the thing is like it's most times it's not just for a lack of wanting. It is a lack of knowing who really controls it, and
yeah.
it's sometimes that. And then I talk all the time about my love of the Bond scores. I really really would love to do some of the '90s Brosnan era Bond
Oh my God, I would love
music.
that.
There's just like so much. I mean, truthfully, like there's very few things that like have never been released
Mhm.
that would be a joy to release, but there's also just some things that have been released that I wish that I could, have a crack at doing something to celebrate it in a
Yes.
more modern context.
Yeah. Well, fingers crossed for Amelie. I thought you were gonna say The Simpsons.
Oh,
The
yes.
because I think it was like, were you at like a vinyl record store or like a
Yeah.
vintage shop and you found the soundtrack to
The
it and
songs in the Kia Springfield. Yeah. So yeah, I every almost every Saturday, my wife wants to go to this half price bookstore in Austin, Texas, and I go right to the soundtrack section and I flip through and I end up coming back with a little stack of CDs because CDs are still pretty, like that, I make them too, but
yeah.
like, what's gone from being like the when I was a kid going to a CD store and going to the soundtrack section, CDs were like the most expensive thing you could find there in the soundtrack section,
Mhm.
soundtrack world anyway. So now it feels like I'm just sort of making peace with like any album that I want, and it's like 3.99. I'm like, yeah, of course I'm gonna buy that. Why wouldn't I? That's like, 16-year-old me couldn't afford to buy the soundtrack to X2,
Yeah.
X-Men United,
Oh.
on compact disc because it was like a $22 CD at
Mhm.
Suncoast Video or whatever. Um, but no, so yeah, Simpsons Songs in Kia Springfield has just been, that's one of those things where it's like since 2013, even before Disney, bought Fox, it's been long been a thing, that I've been trying to do. But The Simpsons is a very, very tight space, and as I understand it anyway. And yeah, I mean, it would be a dream come true to work on that. That album is so important to me. The in particular. My favorite piece of Simpsons music is Stop the Planet of the Apes, I Want to Get Off. The Dr. Zaius
Yes.
song
Mhm.
from the Troy McClure episode of The Simpsons
Oh,
is
so
just something
good.
I think about all the time. And I wish there were full real. I wish if I could get that original cast of the crew of The Simpsons from 1996 or whatever year that was to get
Mhm.
together and finish writing that whole musical. I would listen
Oh,
to it. I would put it on. I would finance it. Let's get that on Broadway. An incredible piece of satire and also Broadway show tunes. It's amazing.
oh, that'd be awesome. They do have a new movie coming out, I think, next year.
Hmm.
So you never
Yeah.
know. You never know.
Yeah. Fingers crossed. I would love to work on The Simpsons
Yeah.
anytime.
Ah, that'd be incredible. Last question before we go. Is there anything that Mutant is currently working on that you're allowed to tease or talk about?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I just spoiled the big bold beautiful journey. Maybe that'll inspire a couple of people to do some research and watch the film as
Yeah.
it comes out. But yeah, no, we have like a very packed couple of months ahead of us.
Mhm.
There are some things that I can't speak about just yet, but coming up soon, we're working on both of the Predator films. If you
Oh.
saw Predator Badlands or even the animated film Killer of Killers, both of
Mhm.
them are great scores by Benjamin Wallfish and Sarah. I'm gonna butcher her last name. I actually before I say it wrong. Sarah Schachner. Schachner. But the scores for both those movies, Killer of Killers and Badlands, both coming soon. And finally getting finishing the Mission Impossible series.
Oh,
Since my days at Mondo and now here, I've been long working on finishing all 8 Mission Impossible scores, and I'm finally finishing it with Rogue Nation very
that's
soon,
so cool.
which will complete the series, and I can finally rest and I can finally stop bugging Tom Cruise's people for art approvals.
Oh, that is so cool. I am looking forward to all of those. Those sound great. But Mo, I can't thank you enough for taking time out of your day to join me and talk all things vinyl and music. Where would be a good place for people to, first of all, follow you and keep up with everything you're working on? And then also, where would be a good place for them to check out Mutant and everything that they have coming out?
Yeah, quite simple. So on all, I would think we're at Made by Mutant on basically every platform. So check us out there if you're interested in what we do. If you like physical media and you like film music or television music or video game music and you want it on physical formats, come check us out there. We're madebymutant.com. Me personally, I'm just at Mo Shafeek on Instagram. That's the only place I hang out, and Letterboxd. That's
Ooh,
the real ones know. Come follow me there. You'll see some teases about things I'm working on because typically that's where you'll see me watching movies there and you'll be like, oh, maybe he's working on that one. Who knows? So that's all.
perfect. I'll put links to all of those in the description of this video. But thank you again, Mo. I really appreciate it and hope to see you again at a another album release party.
Nothing would make me happier. Cheers.
Bye.